Congressman. I'd like to return to the topic of the deficit. Mississippi is one of the poorest states in the nation, and as a result, we depend on getting a lot of federal dollars coming to our state. You mentioned having to cut the federal budget and to reduce the deficit. Specifically, what programs would you consider cutting?
The deficit. You know, I worked in Jackson, state level, chaired the Appropriations Committee. We had the responsibility of balancing our state budget. We had to make some tough decisions. The easy decisions are the ones between good and bad. The tough decisions are when there's a lot of good programs and there's not enough money to go around to play along. Families are making those tough decisions. Local governments, state governments are making those tough decisions. I think we have every reason to expect our government in Washington to do the same thing. We've already begun to cut government spending, but there's a lot left to do. I voted to cut the subsidy on air service in and out of Tupelo. Now, I travel those airplanes. It's very convenient for me. But I'm not going to force my grandchildren to pay for my convenience. It's been a high-profile issue over the last couple of weeks since the first debate. Government subsidy of the airways. My television's got 200 channels on it. I don't think it's necessary for the federal government to go in and subsidize one of those channels. Far too often we've asked in government the question, how can an agency do something better? I think it's time we start asking the question, does government need to be doing this at all? And when we do that, we're going to make a lot of cuts.
Mr. Morris, 90 seconds. If there's any political science students in the room, anyone who has had the opportunity to go to college and take a poli-sci 101 class, the very definition of politics is the allocation of scarce resources. Governments allocate resources through their budget. And it's in those tough times in creating priorities that we really define what our priorities are, where we're looking for the future, what it is we're trying to accomplish. Now, I don't want to get in the back and forth, but it is instructive. Mr. Nunnelee mentioned the chairing the Appropriations Committee during a very tough time. During a very tough time. Decisions had to be made. Priorities had to be ranked. The reality is, though, education never made the cut as a priority. And it wasn't just a matter of voting against education funding. It was that, as Appropriations Chairman, he always led the charge on making those education cuts. Always led the charge as Health Chairman of making those cuts to public health. Today, we see the repercussions of that as the state economist testifies in front of the current legislature that our continuing lag in education, our continuing lag in health care in this state is preventing us from catching up with the rest of the country in terms of this recovery. Those decisions have implications.
Congressman, you have 60 seconds. I need to ask you a real simple question. Can we continue in the direction we're going? It's not working. Our country must make changes. When I taught my children to drive, one of the things that I caution them about is when a light comes on the dashboard, you don't ignore it. Ignoring that light only means things are going to get worse later on. As a nation, we have seen a light come on in Europe, in Greece, in Ireland, Portugal. If we ignore that light, we do so at our own peril. We cannot continue the direction we're going. The good news is we have an opportunity to change.
Mr. Morris, 60 seconds. The decisions we make today, much like those decisions at the legislature 6 or 8 years ago, the decisions we make today in Congress are going to impact the country, going to impact North Mississippi 6, 8 years down the road. I don't think gutting education at a time when we need it most to compete in this economy is the right approach. I don't think cutting college aid that makes it harder for middle-class and working families to send children to college is the right approach. Frankly, I think it's immoral and short-sighted to shift the burden of debt reduction on the backs of children and seniors and middle class and working families, at the same time that the budget you vote for twice gives an additional $250,000 a year in tax breaks to just 181 families here in North Mississippi. It's a matter of prioritizing. My priorities are on the things that make us stronger and will make us able to compete for jobs in the future.